Hey everybody! Shaking my whole desk. Hey K-Trisha, yes Queen, Sote, everybody. Sorry I'm a little bit late today. Just having a day, you know. But I'm all set now. I got interesting coffee and interesting treats from a cafe up the road. So it's an Earl Grey coffee. Like an Earl Grey latte. Not with tea, with coffee in it. Which is actually pretty good. And they also do, they do an Earl Grey cookie and an Earl Grey waffle, which is a croissant waffle. as like a whole thing. Oh, it's for me infinitely better than a tea latte because I find tea lattes to be kind of watery a lot of the time. Like I'd rather just have a cup of tea if I'm gonna do that, right? Like it's like just doesn't go quite far enough, whereas it's got coffee in it, so it's more what I'm looking for. So I'm surrounded by snacks at the moment, which I really need because for anybody who was hanging out last night at the slumber party, it was a bummer slumber party. I was in a bummed out mood. Tried my hardest to get past it, but I was bummed out. I'm still pretty bummed out, but I'm less so now because I'm dealing with it, so. I'm pretty sure this is just a croissant they put in a waffle press, but I'm into it. Yeah, you know, it's life, it's family shit. Shit happens. I'm just trying to go through it. And I'm glad I went online because it was helpful. So. Like, I'm very, very close to not even going on. It was nice to talk to my friends. Mimi's over here trying to get my snacks. So has everybody had a good weekend so far, though? Thanks, Sote, and yes, Queen, and everyone. Good news. I did find people to go to the My Chemical Romance concert with me. That's exciting. So that's all the way in September. That's months away, but it was still good to be like, oh, I still have emo friends. That's great. We'll get to reading in just a second. I just honestly needed to shove this in my face, so y'all get to hang out and watch me eat. Excuse me, miss, it's not for you. Mm-mm. Down there scratching my legs. Oh, does it? Oh, great. This is turned into an ASMR thing. Cool. Stop it. Go lay down. She's already knocked over and been in my office trash earlier today, so, like, she's not eating anything that is not puppy food. The last time she did that, she had been in my office trash, and there were, like, packing peanuts from Lush in there, which are all, like, soy or whatever. They're like not anything that was gonna like hurt her, but they're not like good for her tummy. God, it was gross. She was like upset stomach for days. So puppies shouldn't eat trash. And especially not packing peanuts from Lush, apparently. Well, Yasmin, at least your cat wasn't eating the packing peanuts. Or if they were, you weren't noticing it. Okay. So, for those of you that remember, last week we read, or not last week, on Wednesday, we read partway through chapter 8. So we've still got about 6 minutes left in the chapter, and basically all that's happened, well, not all that's happened, oh my god, okay, so last week, I keep saying last week, you know what I mean. Last time, Feyre had come back from the night court. She had been there previously, due to her bargain, taken away from her wedding. She had a whole thing with Rasan there. They talked, they hung out. He taught her about the bond they have mentally and also taught her how to read, or was working on it anyway. I'm trying to turn my light on here. There we go. So yeah, that was going on. She also met his cousin, who was sort of like an Alice Cullen type. What else? And yeah, there were like secrets and there's a war coming and all the things we've been talking about. And then in last episode, she came back to the spring court and Tamlin was so happy she was back. He'd clearly like thrown a big fit and like destroyed his whole study, and she started begging him to like let her be part of things and like told him that Rasan thinks she has powers and like that she should be able to use them. Yes, and now she's very literate. She just had to read and write things Rasan wrote about himself, being like, Rasan is the best, Rasan is sexy, Rasan is cool. And she was just like, ugh, I can't believe I have to do this. And like I said, like I would have just started to write like nasty stuff instead. I mean, like, I'm proving I can read and write. I'm taking what you're writing and I'm transposing it into something more creative. Come up with something better than prick, because that's all she calls him. But anyway, so she came back. She was hanging with Tamlin. They were trying to reconnect. Obviously, they had a ton of sex. Although it didn't get really dirty, she just sort of mentioned it. And I think basically what she's getting at is like, now that's the only connection they have. Like, they're not connecting on like an emotional or a, or like even like a social level. They're only connecting on a sex level, which is not ideal for a relationship. They had the tithe, which is basically like when everybody comes and pays their taxes, kinda. So that happened. And there was a water wraith who came. And that's like a spooky, like, fish fairy lady who's both scary and sexy from the description. Interesting. Because they're naked. But basically the water wraith was like, I don't have any fish for you. I cannot pay my tax. And Feyre was like, don't make her. And Tamlin was like, you have to. Like, it's the fucking law. And so then Feyre gave her all of her jewelry and was like, use this to pay your tithe. And it made Tamlin pissed because he was like, I gave you that jewelry. And she's like, it doesn't matter to me because it's just jewelry. And so it was like a conflict of what they value. And she was trying to explain, like, you don't know anything about being poor or being, like, having to go through those kinds of hardships, because Feyre obviously does. And he sort of realized, you're right, I don't know anything about that. And he gave her a present of paints and things, but Feyre can no longer stomach painting. Like, she can't do it. Like, it's like completely disgusts her at this point. Like, she's afraid of it. Like, it brings up too many upsetting things. And I mean, I, in some ways, about the painting specifically, think that Tamlin might be kind of right, that like it might help her work on it, like art therapy. You know? Like, if she can work through some of her negative feelings and memories and emotions in a creative way, and allows that part of her that meant so much in book 1. If she allows herself to have that back, it might lead to sort of a rebuilding, but that's just me. She doesn't want to do that. And so the gift of paints was like sort of upsetting to her. And then she like begged him basically to let her be free and not have guards around her all the time, and give her more like privacy and more ability to like roam around, and then eventually be helpful to this war that's coming, and explore that she has powers. And I don't remember specifically what she said, but something she said made Tamlin like so mad, and he exploded like physically, like he was like all claws and teeth and blah, blah, blah. And she protected herself in a bubble. And the way that Kate Tricia described it, and I liked this, was that he did the fairy equivalent of hitting her. Because he didn't hit her and he didn't hurt her, and she was in this protective bubble. So like, that isn't a way to describe it, and I'm not even totally clear on what he like physically did. I just know the room was all fucking destroyed. Because he did some magic explosion thing. But yeah, it was like very scary, and then he immediately was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, and he was like trying to get into the bubble. Yes, he unleashed his magic. Yes. And he was like, hey, please, like, let me in a destructive and unrestrained way. Yes. It's just sort of like one of those things where it's like, it's just a sentence that hopefully conveys what happened, but it's not descriptive enough for me. I'm like, I need more detail on that. Otherwise, I don't fully get what happened there. But that's just my brain. But anyway, yeah, it was bad. And it freaked Feyre out, and he basically was like, I'll never do it again. Please, babe, I'm so sorry. Which is, you know, how it happens. But, so anyway, so yeah, they stopped fighting. She let the bubble down, which is like another thing she can do now, is she can do like a protective bubble thingy. Also, at one point, she thinks that she was able to go into Lucian's head, by the way, and like see through his eyes in the room. So she realized that was like a thing she could do, and that freaked her out. So yeah, so much stuff going on with those powers. I think the implication is that like she's got a little bit of each of the powers of the High Lords, and that like the conversation earlier when they were like, there's no such thing as a High Lady, Rhysandre's like, there could be a High Lady. Technically, there just has never been one, and the High Lords are all afraid of it. And basically like, but I think they created one when they made you, so that could be cool. Yeah. So yeah, and then her and Tamlin made up or whatever, and fucked, and great for them. But anyway, now she's realizing, oh my god, it's been a month. So who's back? So right at the start of this chapter, we realize that Rhysand was back, and he was there to claim her. And she was still in bed and naked when he showed up. So she's covering herself in a blanket, and Tamlin is like trying to tell him to get out of here. Go away. So that's really where we're at. So, without further ado then, I'm going to get started on the rest of Chapter 8. We'll take a very brief pause to transition into Chapter 9, and then we'll keep going because we do still have to do our regular 3. Because, one more thing, I will say, I have confirmed 100% that Jackie will be joining us on Wednesday for another talkback about Part 1. It'll be, once again, starting early, so 6 o'clock instead of 7. So we will be doing that. Pending incoming family stuff, there is a chance that there will need to be a longer break, meaning that the Sunday reading next week may not happen. I don't know yet, but just be advised. I don't know. All up in the air. But things will likely, within the next little while, have to shift around a little bit, but it'll be fine. And then we'll deal with it. But for now, Wednesday's an exciting day. I'm excited to talk to Jackie, see what she thinks. Because as far as I know, she's been keeping up. So we'll see. I have confirmed Bonzo will not be there. I'm not interested in having him on, I'm sorry. I can't stop thinking about it. Holden as Bonzo was something crazy. If you didn't get a chance to watch the Strict stream on Wednesday night, go check it out in the VODs. Oh no, it's Jackie. Go look at it. It's wild and unhinged, which is fantastic. Okay, so I'm just going to start at the top of the page. I know we read a couple of these sentences already, but it'll hopefully sort of get us back into what's up. Tamlin was in Rasan's face in an instant, and I flinched. Get out. He pointed toward the staircase. She'll come to you when she's ready. Rasan just brushed an invisible fleck of dust off Tamlin's sleeve. Thank you, yes, Queen, I will. When you say tone down, you mean the volume, correct? Obviously, if vibes are becoming, not right, always tell me, because I'm sometimes not fully listening. And I'm trying to break away so much from, the lo-fi playlists I've been using, because they're getting repetitive. Rasan just brushed an invisible fleck of dust off Tamlin's sleeve. Part of me admired the sheer nerve it must have taken. Had Tamlin's teeth been inches from my throat, I would have bleated in panic. Reese cut a glance at me. No, you wouldn't have. As far as your memory serves me, the last time Tamlin's teeth were near your throat, you slapped him across the face. I snapped at my forgotten shields, scowling. Why won't you turn down music? Is that better, guys? I just realized for some reason there were multiple streams of the same audio track going in. That would be why. Sorry, y'all. Fixed. It just sort of it copied itself. It's bizarre. Okay. Shut your mouth, Tamlin said, stepping further between us, and get out. The High Lord conceded a step toward the stairs and slid his hands into his pockets. Always the hands in the pockets, dude. You really should have your wards inspected. Calder knows what other sort of riffraff might stroll in here as easy as I did. Again, Reese assessed me, his gaze hard. Put some clothes on. I bared my teeth at him as I stepped back into my room. Tamlin followed after me, slamming the door hard enough that the chandeliers shuddered, sending shards of light shivering over the walls. I dropped the blanket and strode for the armoire across the room, the mattress groaning behind me as Tamlin sank onto the bed. How did he get in here? I asked, throwing open the doors and rifling through the clothes until I found the turquoise night court attire I'd asked Alice to keep. I knew she'd wanted to burn them, but I told her I'd wind up coming home with another set anyway. I don't know, Tamlin said. I slipped on my pants, twisting twisting to find him running a hand through his hair. I felt the lie beneath his words. It's just part of whatever game he's playing. I tugged the short shirt over my head. If war is coming, maybe we'd be better served trying to mend things. We hadn't spoken of that subject since my first day back. I dug through the bottom of the armoire for the matching silk shoes and turned to him as I slid them on. I'll start mending things the day he releases you from your bargain. Maybe he's keeping the bargain so that you'll attempt to listen to him. I strode to where he sat on the bed, my pants a bit looser around the waist than last month. She's losing weight? Feyre, he said, reaching for me, but I stepped out of range. Why do you need to know these things? Is it not enough for you to recover in peace? You earned that for yourself. You earned it. I relaxed the number of sentries here. I've been trying to be better about it. So leave the rest of it. He took a steadying breath. This isn't the time for this conversation. It was never the time for this conversation, or that conversation. But I didn't say it. I didn't have the energy to say it. And all the words dried up and blew away. So I memorized the lines of Tamlin's face, and didn't fight him as he pulled me to his chest and held me tightly. Someone coughed from the hall, and Tamlin's body seized up around me. But I'd had enough fighting in Starling, and going back to that open, serene place atop that mountain, it seemed better than hiding in the library. I pulled away, and Tamlin lingered as I walked back into the hall. Rhys frowned at me. I debated barking something nasty at him, but it would have required more fire than I had, and would have required caring what he thought. Rhys's face became unreadable as he extended a hand, only for Tamlin to appear behind me and shove that hand down. You end her bargain right here, right now, and I'll give you anything you want. Anything. My heart stopped dead. Are you out of your mind? Tamlin didn't so much as blink in my direction. Rasan merely raised a brow. I already have everything I want. He stepped around Tamlin as if he were a piece of furniture and took my hand. Before I could say goodbye, a black wind gathered us up, and we were gone. Oh, that was chapter 10. Blah, I kept saying chapter 8 because that was what's on the tracker, but the tracker is wrong. So we are now on to chapter 11. Great. Okay, chapter 11 is fairly short, so let's get right into it, and then we can stop and pause and have a little chat about it. What the hell happened to you? Rasan said before the night court had fully appeared around us. Why don't you just look inside my head? Even as I said it, the words had no bite. I didn't bother to shove him as I stepped out of his hold. He gave me a wink. Where's the fun in that? I didn't smile. No shoe throwing this time? I could almost see the other words in his eyes. Come on, play with me. I headed for the stairs that would take me to my room. Eat breakfast with me, he said. There was a note in those words that made me pause. A note of what I could have sworn was desperation. Worry. I twisted, my loose clothes sliding over my shoulders, my waist. I hadn't realized how much weight I'd lost, despite things creeping back to normal. I said, "Don't you have other things to deal with?" Of course I do, he said, shrugging. I have so many things to deal with that I'm sometimes tempted to unleash my power across the world and wipe the board clean. Just to buy me some damn peace. He grinned, bowing at the waist. Even that casual mention of his power failed to chill me, awe me. But I'll always make time for you. What? Stop. Nobody can tell. I still am mad about him being the way he is. It's just... I was hungry. I hadn't yet eaten. And that was indeed worry glimmering behind the cocky, insufferable grin. So I motioned him to lead the way to that familiar glass table at the end of the hall. We walked a casual distance apart, tired. I was so tired. When we were almost to the table, Race said, "I felt a spike of fear this morning through our lovely bond. Anything exciting happen at the wondrous spring court?" "It was nothing," I said, because it was, and it was none of his business. "I think that was when Tamlin did the splody thing." I glanced sidelong at him, and rage, not worry, flickered in those eyes. I could have sworn the mountain beneath us trembled in response. "If you know," I said coldly, "why even ask about it?" I dropped into my chair as he slid into his. He said quietly, "Because these days, all I hear through that bond is nothing. Silence. Even with your shields up rather impressively most of the time, I should be able to feel you, and yet I don't. Sometimes I'll tug on the bond only to make sure you're still alive." Darkness guttered. And then one day, I'm in the middle of an important meeting when terror blasts through the bond. All I get are glimpses of you and him, and then nothing. Back to silence. I'd like to know what caused such a disruption. I served myself from the platters of food, barely caring what had been laid on the table. It was an argument, and the rest is none of your concern. Is it why you look like your grief and guilt and rage are eating you alive, bit by bit? I didn't want to talk about it. Get out of my head. Make me. Push me out. You dropped your shield this morning. Anyone could have walked right in. I held his stare. Another challenge. And I didn't care. I didn't care about whatever smoldered in my body, about how I'd slipped into Lucian's head as easily as Reese could slip into mine. Shield or no shield. "Where's more?" I asked instead. He tensed, and I braced myself for him to push, to provoke, but he said, "Away. She has duties to attend to." Shadows swirled around him again, and I dug into my food. "Is the wedding on hold, then?" I paused, eating barely long enough to mumble, "Yes." I expected an answer more along the lines of, "Don't ask stupid questions you already know the answer to," or my timeless favorite, "Go to hell." I only reached for a platter of tartlets. His hands were flat on the table, and a whisper of black smoke curled over his fingers, like talons. He said, "Did you give my offer any thought?" I didn't answer until my plate was empty, and I was heaping more food onto it. "I'm not going to work with you." I almost felt the dark calm that settled over him. "And why, Feyre, are you refusing me?" I pushed around the fruit on my plate. "I'm not going to be a part of this war you think is coming. You say I should be a weapon, not a pawn. They seem like the same to me. The only difference is who's wielding it." "I want your help, not to manipulate you," he snapped. His flare of temper made me at last lift my head. "You want my help because it'll piss off Tamlin." Shadows danced around his shoulders, as if the wings were trying to take form. "Fine," he breathed. "I dug my grave myself, with all I did under the mountain. But I need your help." "Well, I mean, you did, dude. So congrats for knowing that. You did a big old stupid. And a giant betray." Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Again, I could feel the other unspoken words.
Ask me why. Push me about it.
And again, I didn't want to. Didn't have the energy to. Reese said quietly,
I was a prisoner in her court for nearly 50 years. I was tortured and beaten and fucked until only telling myself who I was, what I had to protect, kept me from trying to find a way to end it. Please, help me keep that from happening again to Prithian.
Some distant part of my heart ached and bled at the words, at what he'd laid bare. But Tamlin had made exceptions. He'd lightened the guard's presence, allowed me to roam a bit more freely. He was trying. We were trying. I wouldn't jeopardize that. So I went back to eating. Reese didn't say another word. I didn't join him for dinner. I didn't rise in time for breakfast either. But when I emerged at noon, he was waiting upstairs, that faint, amused smile on his face. He nudged me toward the table he'd arranged with books and paper and ink.
Copy these sentences,
he drawled from across the table, handing me a piece of paper. I looked at them and read perfectly. Rhysand is a spectacular person. Rhysand is the center of my world. Rhysand is the best lover a female can ever dream of. I set down the paper, wrote out the 3 sentences, and handed it to him. The claws slammed into my mind a moment later and bounced harmlessly off a black, glimmering shield of adamant. He blinked.
You practiced.
I rose from the table and walked away. I had nothing better to do. That night, he left a pile of books by my door with a note.
I have business elsewhere. The house is yours. Send word if you need me.
Days passed, and I didn't. Reese returned at the end of the week. I'd taken to situating myself in one of the little lounges overlooking the mountains, and had almost read an entire book in the deep cushioned armchair, going slowly as I learned new words. But it had filled my time, given me quiet, steadfast company with those characters who did not exist and never would, but somehow made me feel less alone. The woman who'd hurled a bone spear at Amarantha, I didn't know where she was anymore. Perhaps she'd vanished that day, her neck had snapped, and fairy immortal... Okay, so, 1 second. The woman who hurled a bone spear is her. Just making that clear, because for a second I was like, what? Perhaps she'd vanished that day, her neck had snapped, and fairy immortality had filled her veins. I was just finishing up a particularly good chapter, the second to last in the book, a shaft of buttery afternoon sunlight warming my feet, when Rhysand slid between 2 of the oversized armchairs, twin plates of food in his hands, and set them on the low-lying table before me.
Since you seem hell-bent on a sedentary lifestyle, he said, I thought I'd go one step further and bring your food to you.
I mean, at least he's providing delivery. Because I love being sedentary. Which, by the way, I'm once again itchy nose, and I think I know what I'm allergic to now. I think it's my fucking primer. My makeup primer. I think the one that I used today is I'm allergic to it. But only on my nose. I get like hay fever from primer. My stomach was already twisting with hunger, and I lowered the book into my lap. Thank you. A short laugh.
Thank you. Not High Lord and servant, or whatever it is you want, you can go shove it up your ass, Rhysand. He clicked his tongue. How disappointing.
I set down the book and extended a hand for the plate. He could listen to himself talk all day if he wished, but I wanted to eat. Now. My fingers had almost grazed the rim of the plate when it just slid away. I reached again. Once more, a tendril of his power yanked the plate further back.
Tell me what to do, he said. Tell me what to do to help you.
Reese kept the plate beyond reach. He spoke again, and as if the words tumbling out loosened his grip on his power, talons of smoke curled over his fingers and great wings of shadow spread from his back.
Months and months, and you're still a ghost. Does no one there ask what the hell is happening? Does your High Lord simply not care?
He did care. Tamlin did care. Perhaps too much. He's giving me space to sort it out, I said, with enough of a bite that I barely recognized my voice.
Let me help you, Reese said. We went through enough under the mountain, I flinched. She wins, Reese breathed. That bitch wins if you let yourself fall apart.
Ugh. I wondered if he'd been telling himself that for months now. Wondered if he too had moments when his own memories sometimes suffocated him deep in the night. But I lifted the book, firing 2 words down the bond between us before I blasted my shields up again. Conversation over.
Like hell it is, he snarled.
A thrum of power caressed my fingers, and then the book sealed shut between my hands. My nails dug into the leather and paper. To no avail. Bastard. Arrogant, presuming bastard. Slowly, I lifted my eyes to him, and I felt not hot temper, but icy, glittering rage. I could almost feel that ice at my fingertips, kissing my palms, and I swore there was frost coating the book before I hurled it at his head. He shielded fast enough that it bounced away and slid across the marble floor behind us.
Good, he said,
his breathing a bit uneven.
What else do you have, Feyre?
Ice melted to flame, and my fingers curled into fists. And the High Lord of the Night Court honestly looked relieved at the sight of it, of that wrath that made me want to rage and burn. A feeling for once. Not like that hollow cold and silence. And the thought of returning to that manor with the sentries and the portals and the secrets, I sank back into my chair, frozen once more.
Anytime you need someone to play with, Reese said, pushing the plate toward me on a star-flecked wind. Whether it's during our marvelous week together or otherwise, you let me know.
I couldn't muster up a response, exhausted from the bit of temper I'd shown, and I realized it was a free fall with no end. It had been for a while. From the moment I'd stabbed that fey youth in the heart. I didn't look up at him again as I devoured the food. The next morning, Tamlin was waiting in the shade of the gnarled, mighty oak tree in the garden. A murderous expression twisted his face, directed solely at Reese. Yet there was nothing amused in Reese's smile as he stepped back from me. Only a cold, cutting predator gazing out. Tamlin growled at me.
Get inside.
I looked between the 2 High Lords, and seeing that fury in Tamlin's face, I knew there would be no more solitary rides or walks through the grounds. Reese just said to me,
Fight it.
And then he was gone. I'm fine, I said to Tamlin as his shoulders slumped, his head bowing.
I will find a way to end this, he swore.
I wanted to believe him. I knew he'd do anything to achieve it. He made me again walk through every detail I had learned at Reese's home. Every conversation, however brief. I told him everything, each word quieter than the last. Protect, protect, protect. I could see the word in his eyes, feel it in every thrust he made into my body that night. Jesus Christ. Gross. I had been taken from him once in the most permanent of ways, but never again. The sentries returned in full force the next morning. That was chapter 11. So yeah, I just... Like, I appreciate that Rasan is, like, noticing something's wrong and he does want to help. That is nice. But still fuck him. Still fuck him. And fuck Tamlin too. Because, like, boy... Right, yes, Queen, it's like, I don't like him. He's just, like, the lesser of two evils at the moment. So, like, my opinion is just be with nobody or be with Morgan, who I liked. Yeah, like, Tamlin's, like... Like, abusive almost doesn't even feel like a strong enough... Well, I mean, abusive is a strong term, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not... It's, like... possessive in, like, an object way. And in a lot of ways, he's kind of like an animal. And that's always been made as a comparison for him. And he's like acting like a dog with his favorite toy. And he's like, I'm not sharing. You know? Like, dude, resource guarding isn't cool. Gotta get a trainer in there for that. Because it's almost like... in some ways, here and there, it is almost like the way that, like, my dog acts, because she, Oh, hey, Arctic! Yes, we're having a great time reading today. Yeah, it's like almost the same way that, like, my dog acts, because she, like, has some, like, possessiveness issues with me and my partner, where, like, she doesn't want to let him too close to me sometimes. But, like, if she is in that mode, she will, like, jump on me and, like, to the point of me being uncomfortable in an effort to keep him off. She's like, she doesn't care so much about, like, whether or not I'm getting, like, scratched up by her claws, or, like, whether her sitting on my neck is a bad thing. She just wants to keep him away, right? And it feels like that. Like, Tamlin's almost doing that. If that makes sense. Right? Asking says, we are also really seeing the whole I'm a high lord and used to getting what I want, not being questioned thing. Yeah, we are. Yeah, for sure. I got so many wires running under my chair. Gotta do some cable management. Oh my god, okay. So, my partner is downtown at the St. Patrick's Day parade right now. And he just sent me a picture of some pups that are in a parade. Because they're all Irish setters and they're all wearing like little shamrock bandanas. It's very cute. He just wanted me to know. Oh, and a cool new vintage store opened up in the storefront of a shop I used to work in. So that's also interesting. Look at that. He's just sending me all kinds of photos. Kidry says, and that's why I loved rereading these books, because you fully saw that in the first book. Yes, you did. And it was just seen as a good thing to favor at the time. Irish setters are beautiful dogs. They sure are. Right, yeah, honestly, I think her now being a fae and being on kind of a similar level is really creating a problem with the power dynamic, because she isn't just like, oh, but I'm a dumb human, and he can't fall back on Feyre, you are human and not safe. Exactly, right? Because, like, she no longer feels like quite so much like she needs to submit to him, and he can't, like, just get her to be like, well, you're just, like, a little nothing human, whatever. Whatever. Tamlin's in whatever jail. So yeah. These are my feelings also. How my candles doing? How's my fire? Cool. No unwanted flames at the moment. This nose thing, y'all. Take like 5 allergy pills and wash the shit out of my face every day. Yay! Come on. Oh, no. I thought the new playlist loaded and it didn't. Gosh darn it. Okay, so let's update the tracker. Head into chapter 12. Not 13, no, 12. My keyboard is literally underneath the container for the croissant waffle, which I should just throw away, but yeah, I can go live up there. I'm so fucking gross. You guys could see how messy I am, like, in its entirety. The world would be so disappointed in me. I always say, like, I am the bad roommate. Like, the roommate you always hear about that's like a mess and you don't want to have them. Like, it's me. I am the messy millennial woman. I am very bad. Right, yes, Queen? Yeah, I've always got all the Amazon boxes. That's just a given. That's always there. Various packing materials just around and craft projects all half finished. It's like all of my ADHD doom piles are just all over. Alright guys, chapter 12. During the first week back, I wasn't allowed out of sight of the house.
some nameless threat had broken onto the lands, and Tamlin and Lucian were called away to deal with it. I asked my friend to tell me...
One second.
Oh, okay, Trisha, that's great.
I would love to hire somebody to clean, but like for whatever reason, all the services, I mean, not for whatever reason, all the services in Toronto are just too damn expensive. I can't afford it. It's like a few $100 to just have them even show up and just do the basics. And it's like, I just can't justify it. But for sure, like if my partner was like severely ill and couldn't do anything, and like if I was, absolutely, it would be one of those things that I would like strongly budget for. Yeah, like 130 plus a tip. Yeah, like that's like I could maybe get them to show up and like tidy a little for that, maybe for like an hour. But like I'm not gonna get much. Luckily, I got my robot vacuum mop for my birthday from my partner. I got a cleany robot. So in terms of the floor, as long as I pick up shit, I can make it clean. They just clean the bathroom and kitchen? Yeah. Yeah, I love the robot. We named him Edward because he sucks. I put a little sticker of Edward Cullen on him. Roomba Richard. That's a good name. If my dad's name wasn't Richard, that might have been on the list. I'd never trust a Rick. Strong opinions. Never trust a Rick. Because we wanted to be Roomba rich. I mean, yes, Queen, there are exceptions to every rule. If I remember correctly, your dad was quite kind. Like, just generally speaking, your dad seemed like a cool dude to me, so. But my dad was kind of a dick, and so was a boss I used to have. His name was Rick also. Sorry. Yeah, I guess there's a reason Dick is a shortening, yeah. Which you cannot say to my dad. He refuses to even acknowledge the fact that his name can be shortened to Dick. He hates that. Okay. I asked my friend to tell me what it was, yet Lucian had this look he always did when he wanted to, but his loyalty to Tamlin got in the way, so I didn't ask again. While they were gone, I thought they returned to keep me company, protect me. I don't know. She was the only one allowed in. Semi-permanent gaggle of spring court lords and ladies at the manor had been dismissed, along with their personal servants. I was grateful for it, that I no longer would run into them while walking the halls of the manor or the gardens. And have to dredge up a memory of their names, personal histories, no longer have to endure them trying not to stare at the tattoo. But I knew Tamlin had liked having them around. I knew some of them were indeed old friends. Knew he liked the manor being full of sound and laughter and chatter. Yet I'd found they all talked to each other like they were sparring partners. Pretty words masking sharp-edged insults. Oh, they're like Canadians. They're just shady. Shady spring court. I was glad for the silence, even as it became a weight on me. Even as it filled my head until there was nothing inside of it beyond emptiness. Eternity.
Was this to be my eternity?
Oh, Southerners too? Yeah, that tracks. I was burning through books every day. Stories about people and places I'd never heard of. They were perhaps the only thing that kept me from teetering into utter despair. Tamlin returned 8 days later, brushing a kiss over my brow and looking me over, and then headed into the study, where Ianthe had news for him that I was also not to hear. Alone in the hall, watching as the hooded priestess led him toward the double doors at its other end, a glimmer of red. My body tensed, instinct roaring through me as I whirled. Not Amarantha. Lucian. The red hair was his, not hers. I was here, not in the dungeon. My friend's eyes, both metal and flesh, were fixed on my hands, where my nails were growing, curving. Not into talons of shadow, but claws that had shredded through my undergarments time and time again. Stop, 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 stop. It did. Like blowing out a candle, the claws vanished into a wisp of shadow. Oh, so she got Tamlin's claws. That's funky. Lucian's gaze slid to Tamlin and Ianthe, unaware of what had happened, and then he silently inclined his head, motioning for me to follow. We took the sweeping stairs to the second level, the halls deserted. I didn't look at the paintings flanking either side, didn't look beyond the towering windows to the bright gardens. We passed my bedroom door, past his own, until we entered a small study on the second level, mostly left unused. He shut the door after I'd entered the room and leaned against the wood panel.
How long have the claws been appearing?
He said softly. This was the first time. My voice rang hollow and dull in my ears. Lucian surveyed me, the vibrant fuchsia gown Ianthe had selected that morning, the face I didn't bother to set into a pleasant expression.
There's only so much I can do, he said hoarsely. But I'll ask him tonight, about the training. The powers will manifest whether we train you or not, no matter who is around. I'll ask him tonight.
He repeated. I already knew what the answer would be, though. Lucian didn't stop me as I opened the door. He'd been leaning against the left without another word. Oh, 1 second. I read that stupid. Lucian didn't stop me as I opened the door he'd been leaning against and left without another word. I slept until dinner, roused myself enough to eat, and when I went downstairs, the raised voices of Tamlin, Lucian, and Ianthe sent me right back to the steps. They will hunt her and kill her, Ianthe had hissed at Lucian. Lucian had growled back,
They'll do it anyway, so what's the difference?
The difference, Ianthe had seethed, lies in us having the advantage of this knowledge. It won't be Feyre alone who is targeted for the gifts stolen from those High Lords. Your children, she then said to Tamlin, will also have such power. Other High Lords will know that, and if they do not kill Feyre outright, then they might realize what they stand to gain if gifted with offspring from her too. What? My stomach had turned over at the implication that I might be stolen and kept for breeding. Surely no High Lord would go so far. Girl, men are a mess. Okay? Like, I don't like to think that they would, but you know it's in there somewhere. Men do be like that sometimes. Not cool.
If they were to do that, Lucian had countered, none of the other High Lords would stand with them. They would face the wrath of 6 courts bearing down on them. No one is that stupid. Rysand is that stupid,
Ianthe had spat.
and with that power of his, he could potentially withstand it. Imagine,
She said, voice softening as she still had no doubt. Voice softening as she had no doubt turned to Tamlin.
a day might come when he does not return her. You hear the poisoned lies he whispers in her ear. There are other ways around it.
She had added with such quiet venom.
We might not be able to deal with him, but there are some friends that I made across the sea.
We are not assassins,
Lucian had cut in.
Rhys is what he is, but who would take his place?
My blood went cold, and I could have sworn ice frosted my fingertips. Lucian had gone on, his tone pleading.
Tamlin. Tam. Just let her train. Let her master this. If the other High Lords do come for her, let her stand a chance.
Silence fell as I let Tamlin consider. My feet began moving the moment I heard the first word out of his mouth, barely more than a growl.
No.
With each step up the stairs, I heard the rest.
We give them no reason to suspect she might have any abilities, which training will surely do. Don't give me that look, Lucian.
Silence again. Then a vicious snarl and a shudder of magic rocked the house. Tamlin's voice had been low, deadly.
Do not push me on this.
I didn't want to know what was happening in that room. What he'd done to Lucian. What Lucian had even looked like to cause with that pulse of power. I locked the door to my bedroom and did not bother to eat dinner at all. See what I mean? Like, this is wrong reaction from Tamlin. Like, I am all about guys who are like, damn, look at my wife. She's so powerful. I am so proud. Fuck yeah. All about that. It's not what he's doing. Tamlin didn't seek me out that night. I wondered if he, Ianthe, and Lucian were still debating my future and the threats against me. There were sentries outside my bedroom the following afternoon, when I finally dragged myself from bed. According to them, Tamlin and Lucian were already holed up in his study. Without Tamlin's courtiers poking around, the manor was again silent as I, without anything else to do, headed to walk the garden paths I'd followed so many times, I was surprised the pale dirt wasn't permanently etched with my footprints. Right, yes, queen? Like, I'd be like, oh my god, she could, like, murder everyone. Fan-fucking-tastic. Love a powerful woman. Only my steps sounded in the shining halls as I passed guard after guard, armed to the teeth and trying their best not to gawk at me. Not one spoke to me. See, now I'm getting tissue flakes on my nose. Those also make me all... Does cotton work better? Does that make it less... My life. No one spoke to me. Even the servants had taken to keeping to their quarters unless absolutely necessary. Maybe I'd become too slothful. Maybe my lazing about had made me more prone to these outbursts. Anyone might have seen me yesterday. And then we'd never spoken of it. Ianthe knew. About the powers. How long had she been aware? The thought of Tamlin telling her my silk slippers scuffed on the marble stairs, the chiffon trail of my green gown slithering behind me. Such silence. Too much silence. I needed to get out of this house. Needed to do something. If the villagers didn't want my help, then fine. I could do other things, whatever they were. I was about to turn down the hall that led to the study, determined to ask Tamlin if there were any tasks that I might perform, ready to beg him. And the study doors flung open, and Tamlin and Lucian emerged, both heavily armed. No sign of Ianthe. "You're going so soon," I said, waiting for them to reach the foyer. Tamlin's face was a grim mask as they approached.
"There's activity to the western sea border. I have to go."
The one closest to Highburn. "Can I come with you?" I'd never asked it outright, but Tamlin paused. Lucian continued past through the open front doors of the house, barely able to hide his wince.
"I'm sorry,"
Tamlin said, reaching for me. I stepped out of his grip.
"It's too dangerous."
"I know how to remain hidden. Just take me with you."
"I won't risk our enemies getting their hands on you."
"What enemies? Tell me something." I stared over his shoulder, toward where Lucian lingered in the gravel beyond the house entrance. No horses. I suppose they weren't necessary this time. When they were faster without them. But maybe I could keep up. Maybe I'd wait until they left and...
"Don't even think about it,"
Tamlin warned. My attention snapped to his face. He growled.
"Don't even try to come after us."
"I can fight," I tried again, a half-truth. A knack for survival wasn't the same as trained skill. "Please." I'd never hated a word more. He shook his head, crossing the foyer to the front doors. I followed him, blurting, "There will always be some threat. There will always be some conflict or enemy or something that keeps me in here." He slowed to a stop just inside the towering oak doors, so lovingly restored after Amarantha's cronies had trashed them.
"You can barely sleep through the night,"
he said carefully. I retorted, "Neither can you." But he just plowed ahead.
"You can barely handle being around other people."
You promised." My voice cracked, and I didn't care that I was begging. "I need to get out of this house."
"Have Braun take you and Ianthe on a ride."
"I don't want to go for a ride." I splayed my arms. "I don't want to go for a ride or a picnic or pick wildflowers. I want to do something, so take me with you." That girl who had needed to be protected, who had craved stability and comfort. She had died under the mountain. I had died, and there had been no one to protect me from those horrors before my neck snapped. So I had done it myself. And I would not, could not, yield that part of me that had awoken and transformed under the mountain. Tamlin had gotten his powers back, had become whole again, become that protector and provider he wished to be. I was not the human girl who needed coddling and pampering, wanted luxury and easiness. I didn't know how to go back to craving those things, to being docile. Tamlin's claws punched out.
"Even if I risked it, your untrained abilities render your presence more of a liability than anything."
It was like being hit with stones, so hard I could feel myself cracking. But I lifted my chin and said, "I'm coming along whether you want me to or not."
"No, you aren't."
He strode right through the door, his claws slashing the air at his sides, and was halfway down the steps before I reached the threshold, where I slammed into an invisible wall. I staggered back, trying to reorder my mind around the impossibility of it. It was identical to the one I'd built that day in the study, and I searched inside the shards of my soul, my heart, for a tether to that shield, wondering if I'd blocked myself, but there was no power emanating from me. I reached a hand to the open air of the doorway and met solid resistance. "Tamlin!" I rasped. But he was already down the front drive, walking toward the looming iron gates. Lucian remained at the foot of the stairs, his face so pale. "Tamlin!" I said again, pushing against the wall. He didn't turn. I slammed my hand into the invisible barrier. No movement, nothing but hardened air. And I had not learned about my own powers enough to try to push through, to shatter it. I had let him convince me not to learn those things for his sake.
"Don't bother trying,"
Lucian said softly as Tamlin cleared the gates and vanished, winnowed.
"He shielded the entire house around you. Others can go in and out, but you can't. Not until he lifts the shield."
He'd locked me in here. I hit the shield again. Again. Nothing.
"Just be patient, Feyre,"
Lucian tried, wincing as he followed after Tamlin.
"Please, I'll see what I can do. I'll try again."
I barely heard him over the roar in my ears. Didn't wait to see him pass the gates and winnow too. He'd locked me in. He'd sealed me inside this house. I hurtled for the nearest window in the foyer and shoved it open. A cool spring breeze rushed in, and I shoved my hand through it, only for my fingers to bounce off an invisible wall. Smooth, hard air pushed against my skin. Breathing became difficult. I was trapped. I was trapped inside this house. I might as well have been under the mountain. I might as well have been inside that cell again. I backed away, my steps too light, too fast, and slammed into the oak table in the center of the foyer. None of the nearby sentries came to investigate. He'd trapped me in here. He'd locked me up. I stopped seeing the marble floor or the paintings on the walls or the sweeping staircase looming behind me. I stopped hearing the chirping of the spring birds or the sighing of the breeze through the curtains. And then crushing black pounded down and rose up from beneath, devouring and roaring and shredding. It was all I could do to keep from screaming, to keep from shattering into 10,000 pieces as I sank onto the marble floor, bowing over my knees, and wrapped my arms around myself. He trapped me. He trapped me. He trapped me. I had to get out, because I'd barely escaped from another prison once before, and this time, winnowing, I could vanish into nothing but air and appear somewhere else, somewhere open and free. I fumbled for my power, for anything, something that might show me the way to do it, the way out. Nothing. There was nothing, and I had become nothing. I couldn't ever get out. Someone was shouting my name from far away. Alice. Alice. But I was ensconced in a cocoon of darkness and fire and ice and wind. A cocoon that melted the ring off my finger until the golden ore dripped away into the void, the emerald tumbling after it. I wrapped that raging force around myself as if I could keep the walls from crushing me entirely, and maybe buy me the tiniest sip of air. I couldn't get out. I couldn't get out. I couldn't get out. Slender, strong hands gripped me under the shoulders. I didn't have the strength to fight them off. One of those hands moved to my knees, the other to my back, and then I was being lifted, held against what was unmistakably a female body. I couldn't see her, didn't want to see her. Amarantha. Come to take me away again. Come to kill me at last. There were words being spoken around me. Two women. Neither of them was Amarantha. Please take care of her. Alice. From right by my ear, the other replied,
Consider yourself very, very lucky that your High Lord was not here when we arrived. Your guards will have one hell of a headache when they wake up, but they're alive. Be grateful.
More held me, carried me. Yeah! I like this better. The darkness guttered long enough that I could draw breath, that I could see the garden door she walked toward. I opened my mouth, but she peered down at me and said,
Did you think the shield would keep us from you? Reese shattered it with half a thought.
But I didn't spy Reese anywhere, not as the darkness swirled back in. I clung to her, trying to breathe, to think.
You're free, Moore said tightly. You're free.
Not safe, not protected. Free. She carried me beyond the garden, into the fields, up a hill, down it, and into a cave. I must have started bucking and thrashing in her arms because she said,
You're out, you're free.
Again and again and again, as true darkness swallowed us. Half a heartbeat later, she emerged into sunlight. Bright, strawberry and grass-scented sunlight. I had a thought that this might be summer, then a low, vicious growl split the air before us, cleaving even my darkness.
I did everything by the book,
Moore said to the owner of that growl. I was passed from her arms to someone else's, and I struggled to breathe, fought for any trickle of air down my lungs. Until Rasan said,
Then we're done here.
Wind tore at me, along with ancient darkness, but a sweeter, softer side of night caressed me, stroking my nerves, my lungs, until I could at last get air inside, until it seduced me into sleep. Well, there you are then. So that was chapter 12. Correct, yes, Queen. I believe we call this an international incident. Yes. So she has now been essentially kidnapped. Whether she is okay with that or not is the question, but she is essentially kidnapped. So that's gonna make Tamlin pissed. Love more, love her. I'm glad she showed up. I'm glad it was her. I don't even think Rasan needed to be involved. I think he can just go away. Bye. Bye. You burned your bridge. Bye-bye. I agree, asking. Yes, Alice was fine with it. So I find that a little strange. I don't know what's going on there. So she was down with it. But yeah, like, she's clearly not doing well. So, I mean, a real friend would want her to be somewhere that she felt safe, and I don't think she feels safe there. Exactly, Kadrisha. Like, people see what's going on, they just can't do anything about it. I appreciate that, like, Lucian is trying to, in the most diplomatic way possible, help. But I think he's so blind to his friend. He's having a hard time, you know? So let's pop into chapter 13 here. Update our tracker. Like, I don't know if he realizes, Tamlin, I don't know if he realizes quite what he did when he made that choice, you know? Because he doesn't want to be like that. I also find it interesting that, like, she's put it into words, like, very explicitly several times now, that, like, the her that we got used to in book 1, the her that liked to paint, that, like, wanted security and simplicity and just wanted to, like, have an easy life, is dead. Like, she died when she wasn't human anymore. when she was human. She is gone. And this is a new her. And that's cool. Right? Because it shows that, like, people change, fairies change, that she's undergone, like, a spiritual revolution as well, right? You know, she's just completely transformed internally and externally. She is all different. Which I think lends even more to, you know, my feeling that, like, everybody in this book is basically a new person, right? So I am trying to judge them based on this book versus book one. Even Rasan, it's difficult for me to let it go, but I'm trying a little bit, you know. Right, yes, but yeah, big traumatic life experiences can totally leave you an entirely different person. And I like to think that, like, those pieces of you are always there, right? They're just, some are in bigger proportion, depending on what you've gone through and what your life is like at any given time, right? So, like, your past yous and your future yous and your current you are all there. You never truly lose any piece of you. You never truly, like, gain a new piece. You know what I mean? It's all there. And you just work on different pieces, and, like, whatever you feed is bigger, right? That's the philosophy I try to live with, because it makes change a little easier for me anyway. To think, like, if I change, I'm not losing any piece of myself, right? It's still there. I can access it if I want. Same thing with other power, right? Other personal power is there for you. So you just got to try to access what is good for you as often as you can. Okay. Chapter 13. I woke to sunlight and open space. Nothing but clear sky and snow-capped mountains around me. And Rasan lounging in an armchair across from the couch where I was sprawled, gazing at the mountains, his face uncharacteristically solemn. I swallowed, and his head whipped toward me. No kindness in his eyes. Nothing but unending icy rage. But he blinked, and it was gone. Replaced by relief. Exhaustion. And the pale sunlight warming the moonstone floors. Dawn. I always forget they've got, like, what's probably just the most fucking beautiful flooring. The aesthetics of this place, I am just, like, all about. I'll replace all my floors with moonstone. Give it to me. It was dawn. I didn't want to think about how long I'd been unconscious. What happened? I said. My voice was hoarse, as if I'd been screaming. You were screaming, he said. I didn't care if my mental shield was up or down or completely shattered. You also managed to scare the shit out of every servant and sentry in Tamlin's Manor when you wrapped yourself in darkness and they couldn't see you. Shit. My stomach hollowed out. Did I hurt any? No. Whatever you did, it was contained to you. You weren't... By law and protocol, he said, stretching out his long legs. Things would have become very complicated and very messy if I had been the one to walk into that house and take you. Smashing that shield was fine, but Moore had to go in on her own 2 feet, render the sentries unconscious through her own power, and carry you over the border to another court before I could bring you here. Or else Tamlin would have free rein to march his forces into my lands to reclaim you. And as I have no interest in an internal war, we had to do everything by the book. That's what Moore had said, that she did everything by the book. But when I go back, as your presence here isn't part of our monthly requirement,
You were under no obligation to go back.
He rubbed at his temple.
Unless you wish to.
What an interesting way to put it. The question settled in me like a stone sinking to the bottom of a pool. There was such quiet in me, such nothingness. He locked me in that house, I managed to say. A shadow of mighty wings spread behind Reese's chair. But his face was calm as he said,
I know. I felt you. Even with your shields up, for once.
I made myself meet his stare. I have nowhere else to go. It was both a question and a plea. He waved a hand, the wings fading.
Stay here for however long you want. Stay here forever if you feel like it.
I need to go back at some point.
Say the word and it's done.
He meant it too. Even if I could tell from the ire in his eyes that he didn't like it. He'd bring me back to the spring court the moment I asked. Bring me back to silence and those sentries and a life of doing nothing but dressing and dining and planning parties. He crossed his ankle over a knee.
I made you an offer when you first came here. Help me, and food and shelter, clothing. All of it is yours.
I'd been a beggar in the past, and thought of doing it now.
Work for me,
Razan said.
I owe you anyway, and we'll figure out the rest day by day if need be.
I looked toward the mountains, as if I could see all the way to the spring court in the south. Tamlin would be furious. He'd shred the manor apart. But he'd locked me up. Either he so deeply misunderstood me, or he'd been so broken by what went on under the mountain, but he'd locked me up. I'm not going back. The words rang in me like a death knell. Not until I figure things out. I shoved against the wall of anger and sorrow and outright despair as my thumb brushed over the vacant band of skin where the ring had once sat. One day at a time. Maybe Tamlin would come around. Heal himself, that jagged wound of festering fear. Maybe I'd sort myself out. I didn't know. But I did know that if I stayed in that manor, if I was locked up one more time, it might finish the breaking that Amarantha had started. Rasan summoned a mug of hot tea from nowhere and handed it to me.
Drink it.
Oh, never take a drink from this man again, though. Like, regardless. Just saying. I took the mug, letting its warmth soak into my stiff fingers. He watched me until I took a sip, and then went back to monitoring the mountains. I took another sip. Peppermint and licorice, and another herb or spice. I wasn't going back. Maybe I'd never even gotten to come back. Not from under the mountain. Well, no, you did die. When the mug was half finished, I fished for something, anything, to say to keep the crushing silence at bay. The darkness, is that part of the power you gave me?
One would assume so.
I drained the rest of the mug. No wings?
If you inherited some of Tamlin's shapeshifting, perhaps you can make wings of your own.
A shiver went down my spine at the thought. And the claws I'd grown that day with Lucian. And the other High Lords? Ice, that's winter. That shield I once made of hardened wind. Who did that come from? What might the others have given me? Is winnowing tied to any one of you in particular? He considered.
Wind, The day court, likely. And winnowing, it's not confined to any court. It's wholly dependent on your own reserve of power and training.
I didn't feel like mentioning how spectacularly I'd failed to even move an inch.
And as for the gifts you got from everyone else, that's for you to find out, I suppose.
I should have known your goodwill would wear off after a minute. Reese let out a low chuckle and got to his feet, stretching his muscled arms over his head and rolling his neck. As if he'd been sitting there for a long, long while. For the entirety of the night.
Rest a day or two, Feyre, he said. Then take on the task of figuring out everything else. I have business in another part of my lands. I'll be back by the end of the week.
Despite how long I'd slept, I was so tired. Tired in my bones, in my crumpled heart. When I didn't reply, Reese strode off between the moonstone pillars. And I saw how I would spend the next few days. In solitude, with nothing to do and only my own horrible thoughts for company. I began speaking before I could reconsider. Take me with you. Reese halted as he pushed through 2 purple gossamer curtains, and slowly he turned back.
You should rest.
I've rested enough, I said, setting down the empty mug and standing. My head spun slightly. When had I last eaten? Wherever you're going, whatever you're doing, take me along. I'll stay out of trouble, just please. I hated the last word, choked on it. It hadn't done anything to sway Tamlin. For a long moment, Reese said nothing. Then he prowled toward me, his long stride eating up the distance and his face set like stone.
If you come with me, there is no going back. You will not be allowed to speak of what you see to anyone outside of my court, because if you do, people will die. My people will die. So if you come, you will have to lie about it forever. If you return to the Spring Court, you cannot tell anyone there what you see, and who you meet, and what you will witness. If you would rather not have that between you and your friends, then stay here.
Stay here. Stay locked up in the Spring Court. My chest was a gaping, open wound. I wondered if I'd bleed out from it. If a spirit could bleed out and die. Maybe that had already happened. Take me with you, I breathed. I won't tell anyone what I see, even them. I couldn't bear to say his name. Reese studied me for a few heartbeats, and finally he gave me a half smile.
We'll leave in 10 minutes. If you want to freshen up, go ahead.
An unusually polite reminder that I probably looked like the dead. I felt like it. But I said, where are we going? Reese's smile widened into a grin.
To Valaris, the city of starlight.
Ooh, that sounds pretty. The moment I entered the room, the hollow quiet returned, washing away with it any questions I might have had about a city. Everything had been destroyed by Amarantha. If there were a city in Prithian, I would no doubt be visiting a ruin. I jumped into the bath, scrubbing down as swiftly as I could, then hurried into the night court clothes that had been left for me. My motions were mindless, each one some feeble attempt to keep from thinking about what had happened. What Tamlin had tried to do and had done. What I had done. By the time I returned to the main atrium, Reese was leaning against a moonstone pillar, picking at his nails. He merely said,
"That was 15 minutes,"
before extending his hand. Sorry. I had no glimmering ember to even try to look like I cared about his taunting before we were swallowed by a roaring darkness. Wind and night and stars wheeled by as he winnowed us through the world, and the calluses of his hand scratched against my own fading ones before before sunlight, not starlight, greeted me. Squinting at the brightness, I found myself standing in what was unmistakably a foyer of someone's home. The ornate red carpet cushioned the one step I staggered away from as I surveyed the warm, wood-paneled walls, the artwork, the straight, wide oak staircase ahead. Flanking us were 2 rooms. On my left, a sitting room with a black marble fireplace. Lots of comfort, elegant, but worn furniture, and bookshelves built into every wall. On my right, a dining room with a long, cherry wood table big enough for 10 people. Small compared to the dining room at the manor. Down the slender hallway ahead were a few more doors, ending in one that I assumed would lead to a kitchen. A townhouse. I'd visited one once when I was a child, and my father had brought me along to the largest town in our territory. It had belonged to a fantastically wealthy client, and it smelled like coffee and mothballs. A pretty place, but stuffy, formal. This house was a home that had been lived in and enjoyed and cherished. And it was in a city. And that's the end of part 1! Oh boy! Okay, so we've just learned that the Night Court still has full-ass cities. So that's exciting. I'm assuming his territory might have been less destroyed because he played nice with Amarantha? Likely. Yes, that is a good assumption. That is a good assumption. Yeah. So I wonder whose house this is a lot. And this also kind of just reminded me that, like, she still hasn't gotten back in touch with her family and figured out what's going on with them. In any way. And I know that she originally said it was because, like, she didn't want them to know everything that happened to her and, like, what she's like, but... Like, I would think, because she loves them so much, she would at least want to, like, find out what happened to them. So, like, you would think she would send somebody to, like, go find out what's going on and report back, you know? Sneaky, like, but, huh? And I guess she's just gonna get to, like, live in the Night Court now. So I guess she's just not going back. Which is difficult for her. I can tell, and I'm sure even more so. Because, like, that's her heartbreaking, right? That's the person she loved just betrayed her. In a way that, like, maybe he didn't even realize how much he was doing it. Like, which is almost even more painful because, like, does he just, like, not know her at all or care? It's very painful. And, like, she just made the choice to just, like, basically end that relationship, which is awful. Oh, for sure, yes, Queen, yes. Lucian definitely gets her better than Tamlin. Also, to your point about is she even allowed to go to the human lands, I don't know that. And, like, what I'm saying is, like, I'm sure there's someone who could go for her, right? Even in a sneaky, like, spy way. Right? To go find out where her family is, just make sure they're okay and just, like, do a check-in, you know? But maybe she doesn't want to. Maybe she isn't in that place right now, and that's fair. Clearly, there's a lot going on. But yeah. Shit. But I am, like... I'm impressed with the tact of Rhysand and his dealing with this situation. And he's clearly not cool with the way Tamlin's treating her and is like clearly very upset about it. Which is good, although I'm like, dude, you also did not treat her great previously. So you're really gonna be like all pissed now? All pissy because... Oh, for sure, like, he definitely gets it better than Tamlin gets it, for sure. But like, I'm just saying, like, he's so mad at Tamlin about his treatment of Pharaoh, which, sure, yeah, but like without really taking into account everything that he has also done to her, specifically, I think. But so new page for her. She's turning over a new leaf, you know, she's gonna go try a new thing. I am anxious to see what Tamlin has to say about all this and what happens. But we'll have to wait until we start part 2, which will not be today. Okay, so yeah, I am gonna end our reading for the day. It is over. Part 1 is over. Remember to pop back in on Wednesday at 6 for our talk back with Jackie. I will promo the shit out of that if I can this time. So hopefully folks that usually don't make it can maybe make it this time. I know, boo, I know. But yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be really fun. And yeah, hopefully by then I'll have a clearer update for y'all on like what our scheduling and timeline is going to be like. Hello, Felix. Felix, welcome. We're actually just wrapping up the reading for today, but it's nice to have you. Nice to see a new face in chat, or one we don't see regularly anyway. I know, damn, yeah, but like the VOD will be live any minute. You can go and you can catch up, and then like I was just saying, we're gonna be back on Wednesday with part 2 of the book, and with our special guest, Jackie Zabrowski of Oh No, It's Jackie and the Last Podcast Network, coming in to do a little talk back about what we thought of part 1. Very exciting. So yeah, like I said, we are done for today, but please make sure that you mark your calendars, and we will have more updates for you soon. Love you all very much. Not sure if I'll see any of you in my regular streams tonight in chat, but if I do, talk to y'all soon, and have a great rest of your Sunday night. Bye!